I am the famous American. No, I don't know what order I'm going to publish all these videos. I don't know if it's going to actually be chronologically correct, but ultimately I'm making this video because of something I said in the video before. I made this when I was talking about President Obama not being the first black president, but instead being the first biracial president. And I talked about his mother being very white because she was from Kansas. And I said because Kansas is a very white state. So let's talk about that. I think it's worth exploring. Certain states are very white, meaning they have a higher percentage of the majority being people of European descent. For example, one of my roommates in college, Josh, he was from Vermont, to which he informed me, joking, not in a racist way, he's like, yeah, I'm from the whitest state in the United States, Vermont. It has the most white people per capita and the least minorities than any other state. And granted, it's a small state and not a lot of people live there, but you go to Vermont, pretty much everyone is of European descent, specifically Northern European descent. Anglo-Saxon specifically is what you're going to see there. And there are plenty of states like that that I'm thinking of right now, and I'd already mentioned Kansas, for example. I would also throw a lot of those mountain states in there. For example, I would go ahead and say that about the Dakotas, Wyoming, Montana. Those are very white states. Whereas my home state of Alabama, you can't say that. While people of European descent are the majority, ultimately there is a large black population, a lot of Hispanic people there as well. So I don't come from a very white state. But Vermont and Kansas and the Dakotas and so on, there are certain states that are more white than others. Now, that doesn't mean that those states are any more racist than the other state, because then there's California, which is a very much mixed state, but it's not to say that there's any less racism there because they're more mixed. And sometimes it actually brings more attention to that when there is more. And granted, there's parts of the world where it's not an issue. There are, I know, Trinidad, for example. I've been there, and when I think of people from Trinidad, I think, okay, well, there are people of African descent, there are people of Indian descent, and I mean the country India, not Native American, but India. And then there's a decent amount of people of Chinese descent that I would see there. And sometimes I would see people who specifically looked Chinese, specifically looked African, specifically looked Indian. And other times it was a perfect mix and you could see it all in there. But in the United States, we're more aware of our racial backgrounds here. Is it because we're racist? I would say not so much. I would say we live in the aftermath of racism, of outright racism, and as far as civil rights movement needing to happen because of it. So if you're like me and born in 1981, then you're aware of what happened a couple of decades ago and you want nothing to associate like that. You want to make sure that minorities are not being discriminated against. It's very important to you, especially if you're not a minority, which technically, because of the Mexican heritage, technically, but still, unless I talk about it, people don't know that. So I'm just another white guy to most people, right? So for us, we're very woke, we're very aware of the concept that we do not want people to be discriminated against. But the paradox, the irony of that is it makes us more aware, and that's a good thing, but it also makes us aware, and that's a bad thing, because then we get caught up into being that much more aware that someone's of a different race. And by that, we also, and this makes it challenging, to recognize someone as a different race is also to recognize here in the United States that it largely means they have some different cultural values and views and perspectives than the rest of us. You know, we can say that, and it doesn't have to be a racist thing. White people have their own culture too, and I'm actually going to be making some videos about that as well. So it's interesting to see how all that works out. But ultimately, yes, we can look at different states in the United States, and certain ones, yes, definitely culturally, not only culturally, but specifically the people who make up the population. There's going to be, you look around in a restaurant or a store, pretty much you don't see really any minorities. And if you do, you notice them that much more because it's more rare for that to be the case. Your comments belong right here.